Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Be the change that we wish to see in the world. Gandhi's famous words encompass aspects of what it is to walk the path of the sacred masculine, because it's all about seeing what is not right within ourselves, taking responsibility and changing it, because the sacred masculine knows that real change is always an inside job, and he is committed to helping to create a more beautiful world. He knows that as he does to another, he does unto himself, because really there is no other. Everything is connected in this sacred life. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Bring Him Home Sacred Masculinity Rising podcast series. Our time and space to explore principles, stories, and experiences of what it looks like to walk the road and embody the sacred masculine. My name is Miguel Dean, and I am the author of Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story. This is my true story of a conscious, passionate, loving relationship with an extraordinary woman, and how it played a significant role in the rising of my own sacred masculinity. My intention is that through sharing my personal love story in the book and creating this podcast series, I will catalyse the divine twin flame union within the hearts of many men and women, so that we can create a more beautiful world for our children and the generations to come. Find out more about my book and the rest of my work at my website, which is migueldean.net. So we're going to be looking at the different principles of what it is to be the sacred masculine, to live the life of the sacred masculine, to walk the road of the sacred masculine. And today's principle that we're going to look at is about commitment. So the principle is essentially, I have a deep commitment to healing and growth. Now, what does commitment mean? I guess really it's just about really meaning something and really fixing our focus, our attention on achieving something, despite perhaps the challenges or the things that come to knock us off balance. So a deep commitment to healing and growth, to our own healing and growth, because we know that it is only when we change ourselves, that we look within, that inside job where change always happens, that is when we can create the greatest impact in the world. And of course, at the same time, we create the greatest impact for ourselves. We come home to the truth of who we really are, which is love and light and compassion and kindness and service. So, commitment. When I think of the word commitment, I guess the first thing that comes up for me is the commitment that I made to my twin flame. I have quite a story of, I guess some people might call them failed relationships, but I don't like to see them as failed, because I learned so much from them. They just came to an end. Perhaps, a successful relationship isn't necessarily one that just lasts forever, but perhaps it's how much we learn and how deep those relationships go. Anyway, when I met my twin flame, I was so bowled over by her, and there was just this incredibly strong attraction and pull that it kind of really confused me, and I was sort of, it was so unfamiliar to me. But I was just immediately so in love with her and so wanted to be with her, and was kind of scared that, things might go wrong as it had done in past relationships. So I made myself a pledge. And it felt like I really sort of stuck my sword in the ground, my warrior's sword. And I said, I stand here and I will do the work that I need to do. I'm not going to let old wounds and old patterns and old habits that got in the way of past relationships ruin this one. Whatever it takes, I will face it. And so that's what I did. And well, you can read in the book that life said, okay, let's let him have it. And what a journey that was. What a journey. But my commitment, although it wavered at times, it stayed strong. And that committing, that really sort of locking on to what it is that you need to achieve, rather than just giving up when it gets a little bit tricky, Committing. So committing to healing and growth, what does that look like? Well, I guess there's lots of different ways of, different levels to our healing. And, perhaps the first one that comes to mind is just our physical healing. We need to look after our physical bodies. So there's an obvious commitment to eating well, to having a good diet, to perhaps doing some exercise. I think there's a balance to everything. And I'm not one of these people that's really, really super self-conscious about what I eat. I'm mostly vegetarian. I eat mostly organic if I can. And I like to eat as natural food as possible, not too processed. I don't eat a lot of sugar. I don't actually eat a lot of wheat or dairy because they just don't make me feel that good. I don't really drink. I don't really smoke. Maybe just have a little bit here and there. But, it's about honouring our bodies, really. It's about honouring our bodies, but it's important to me that when we do this work, that it's coming from a place of love for ourselves and because we want to be the best version of ourselves, rather than coming from a place of fear that I'm scared of getting ill or I'm scared of getting old. There's a subtle shift, the energy from which our doing arises. So committing to eating well, committing to exercising. I practice Tai Chi, which I've done for a number of years. That begins most of my days. And I just love walking in nature. I live near the Malvern Hills in Worcestershire, the UK. And the hills are my personal trainer, my lover, my therapist. So much magic happens when I'm just, under the sky and walking the land. It's important to me. It's important that we commit to enough rest, not being busy all the time, not do, which is, that's often the way with this world, isn't it, that we live in. There's such a pull to always be doing something, to go straight from one thing to the next. But what happens when we do that is that we don't have chance to feel, we don't have chance to process, we don't have chance to integrate the experiences that we're having. And if you like, the gaps, the spaces in between the doing can be likened to the feminine. In so many ways, the masculine is the action, and the feminine is the space. Like if you imagine a symphony, if there were no spaces between the notes, it would just sound like a real cacophony. But that balance of doing and resting are really important in order to be whole and healthy. So I have a morning routine where when I wake up, I do a little bit of breathing exercises before I actually get out of bed. I always start with a big glass of spring water. And then my second drink is always spring water and cider vinegar, or spring water and lemon juice. I do some skin brushing for my lymphatic system. I'm really into hot and cold showers, again for the lymphatic system and just kind of for my energy system. It just feels really good. And then I do some Tai Chi, and most mornings I'll do a fresh juice. Beetroot, celery and apple and ginger is my favourite at the moment. So it's just this, getting into these habits of it, and it doesn't need to be from a place of martyrdom. It's just doing stuff that feels good and that makes us feel good. Being committed to honouring the body. When we think about our own healing and growth and taking care of ourselves, I guess the second thing that comes up is our emotions, and this is a big one for the path of the sacred masculine, because a large part of the journey, in my experience, is the journey back from the head into the heart. And what I mean by that is, as boys, as young boys, we're often taught, big boys don't cry, and we may be shamed or told off or punished for showing emotions that are labelled as being weak. So we grow up learning to suppress our emotions and perhaps feel shame when we're feeling the emotions which are put in this big category of negative emotions of shame or jealousy or fear or weakness, or all these emotions are important. They're part of the full spectrum of what it is to be human. But when we're growing up, we're often taught to suppress them and not to feel them, and so we leave behind our feeling center. We leave behind the heart, and we retreat back into our heads, and we just become talking heads. Again, there's a balance here of the masculine and feminine. The mind is often is often the male counterpart, the masculine counterpart, and the heart is more of the feminine. So we have the thinking, which is more of a masculine energy, and the feeling, which is more of a feminine energy. And remember that these aren't gender specific. When I say masculine and feminine, they can be replaced with just the yin and yang. They're two different energies and we're supposed to incorporate them and balance and allow them to both integrate and union of both of those to feel whole, to feel balanced, and to feel fully alive. We have to feel. So it's making this journey back from the head into the heart is a really important part of our emotional health, allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to feel that it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to feel bereft. It's okay to feel grief. All these things are important. When a baby is born, whether it's male or female, it will cry. It will express its emotions. It will express its sadness or its pain or its discomfort. We don't find that, it's only little girl babies that cry and boys don't cry. So for the man, it's important, and often for women as well. This goes across the genders, that we make this journey back from the head to the heart, and that we give ourselves permission to feel what we need to feel. Often we will find when we first do this work that there's a residue. There are feelings that are unexpressed that are trapped in our bodies. And if we don't feel them, that we end up manifesting as some sort of physical illness. The physical illness is often, for example, in Chinese medicine, it's just seen as a blockage in the qi, in the energy that flows around our bodies. And those blockages often happen by blocked emotions, unexpressed feelings. So we take care. We're committed to feeling what it is that we need to feel, knowing that is an essential part of our healing and growth. When we go through, my experience was that when I made that journey back to my heart, to begin with, I felt an awful lot of discomfort and an awful lot of pain of what had not been felt at the time of the traumas or the wounds that had happened as I grew up. But once you pass through that, you start accessing the energy of the heart, an awe, a bliss, total reverence for life, and we begin to just see everything differently when we're kind of looking from the eyes of the heart. So emotional intelligence is key. And often, in the Trinity, we have the body, we have the feelings, and of course we have the mind. So we become mindful. We are committed to grow and to be healthy. But my Tai Chi teacher always used to say, mind moves first. So often it is a thought that will arise, that will trigger an emotion in the body, and then that will, result in a feeling or the outcome or our actions or the words that we speak. So when we become mindful, we become aware of our thoughts. We become the witness of our thoughts instead of just acting and thinking that we are our thoughts. There's a saying that says, the mind makes an excellent servant, but a poor master. The sacred masculine sees and knows that he is this higher self, this witness, this observer, this that has a direct relationship with the divine or with God or with Source. So he witnesses and he becomes more and more aware of his thoughts and chooses which thoughts that he entertains, because some of them will bring suffering and negative outcomes, and other thoughts will lead to joy and happiness and more positive outcomes. There's a simple equation that helps with this in our choice to become mindful, and it's this: it's E plus R equals O. Now, what that stands for is event plus response equals outcome. So the E for events, what that's speaking to is just saying that things will happen in life. Challenges will arise. Difficulties will arise. The unexpected will happen. And we sometimes, or maybe often, we don't have control over those things. Other people are responsible for them, or external factors or circumstances. But what we do have control over is our response to the things that happen, to the thoughts that we have that we connect to the things that happen. Now, what happens with a lot of people is that they don't respond to events, they react. Now, a reaction is kind of like a knee-jerk reaction. It's an automatic thing that just happens without really, without any thought or any planning. Whereas a response always has a pause before it. The event happens and we pause and we witness our thoughts and we decide which ones are helpful and which ones are true and which ones are in alignment with integrity, which ones are in alignment with the path of the sacred masculine. And then we choose our thoughts wisely, because they will then lead to the outcome. Event plus response equals outcome. If we have a helpful, positive response, then we will have a helpful, positive outcome. I suppose, it's quite a big example of this, but I use it sometimes when I'm working with my clients. And it's that, my mother died when I was very young. And for a long time, I felt quite a victim about that. The event was the death of my mother. And initially my response was, poor me. It gave me an excuse to be messed up, if you like. It gave me an excuse to go off the rails as I did in my youth. It gave me an excuse to fall down the well of addiction. But as I matured and as I found that response was just basically killing me, I decided that I would choose a different response. And that response was that, okay, so what is it that I can learn from that which happened? And what I learned was that the death of my mother really put me on the track of the sacred masculine, because I began when I was a young man, because of the wound I carried from losing my mother. I began going in search of that which I had experienced as a little child, as a little baby, and had lost. I wanted woman to complete me. I wanted a mother replacement. But of course, that's not how it works. And so my relationships all failed because I was carrying this mother wound. When I decided and realized that what life was asking me was to find the divine feminine within me. It was to access that within me. And that journey that I embarked on to find that, to rediscover that, to rekindle that light within me, built my character. And it taught me so much on that journey. So that brings me to the journey, because commitment to healing and growth is always a journey. We walk a life's journey. And on that journey, we will rise and we will fall. That is part of the human experience. There are ups and there are downs. And on that journey, we learn to be resilient. We learn that if we're knocked down, and if we get things wrong, and if we get lost on our road to sacred masculinity, then it's okay. It's not an excuse to beat ourselves up. It's not an excuse to give up. We rest for a while, perhaps. Perhaps we roll over in our place on the floor where we've fallen down, and maybe we just look at the stars a little while, or we watch the clouds. And when we're ready, we pick ourselves up and we put one foot in front of the other again. We don't necessarily look at the top of the mountain of whatever it is that we need to achieve on our journey. We just look at, where do we put the next step? We persevere. When the going gets tough, we maybe just slow down a little, or maybe we rest a little bit. But when we're ready, we move forward again. Because the sacred masculine knows that the journey is the destination. It's what we learn on the way. When we're climbing the mountain, we get to the top. And when we get to the top, we're like, oh yeah, I'm there. I've arrived. But very quickly we notice that beyond that mountain, there is another range of higher peaks. Because there is always a deeper level. There is always a greater fullness of the potential of being totally who we are, coming back into alignment even more with the sacredness that we are, and making that journey back to oneness, back to the truth of who we really are. So in our commitment to healing and growth, we develop our resilience and our perseverance, and we accept these. I'll share with you a piece that I wrote, which illustrates this principle quite nicely, I think, and particularly this aspect of, that sometimes we get things wrong, sometimes we fall down, sometimes we struggle, and it's okay. Yesterday, I fell. The challenges had been coming too quick and fast, and I didn't have enough time to regroup and center myself. I forgot about me and tried to carry too much. The fear touched some tender scars, and the discomfort in my body clouded my vision, and I lost sight of who I really am. My little boy got scared, and the man was a little too hard on him. Yesterday I fell. I held space for those who I was responsible for as best as I could, and gave my best, knowing that it was good enough. In the giving, I received, and I was reminded of my worth. It needed to be a gentle day. Everything that was not immediately necessary was put on hold while I rested in my falling, while I viewed everything from my new vantage point in the corner of my world, with my arms hugging my tucked up knees and my head bowed. I rocked myself gently. Yesterday I fell, and yet my friend phoned, asking if now was a good time to call. And I replied that the timing was perfect. And I gave thanks for the beauty of friends and connection, and I spoke my truth from a tender, vulnerable place inside me. And I missed him when he was gone. Yesterday I fell, and still I moved around the grey alien landscape of the supermarket, buying groceries that would be needed for the imminent arrival of my son, so that there would be wholesome sustenance for the both of us. I moved around the distant world, getting stuff done, and the shapes of people were unaware that I had fallen. Yesterday I fell, and still my soul heard the call, and my heavy legs walked the sanctuary of my hills, plodding my way up to the summit, and turning to face the sun that appeared momentarily from behind the thick, mottled clouds. I lay and allowed my body to be held by the earth, and I breathed it all in and breathed it all out, allowing the sun's rays into my wide open mouth, and then gulped and swallowed lungs full of sunshine into me. Yesterday I fell, and so I took myself to bed early and snuggled myself under the comfort of my warm, soft covers and felt my fallenness. I felt the heavy sensations in my tired body, and with my mind I caressed my weariness. Yesterday I fell, and today I awake to the sound of rain outside my open window. The clouds have broken and let fall their cleansing drops, and the air feels fresher and lighter again. There was not a spectacular sunrise to be seen today, but nevertheless a new day has dawned. My tender heart reminds me to go gently, for today I rise again. Today is a new day, and today I rise, and I'm at peace, knowing that all is well and all manner of things shall be well, in spite of the fact, and partly because yesterday I fell. The sacred masculine knows that the journey is the destination. He's resilient and he perseveres in the face of adversity because he knows that everything is a gift. He is deeply committed to his healing and growth. I'd like to end with my blessing, which I wrote for the front of my book, Bring Him Home. May the energy of this podcast be a catalyst for the union of the divine feminine and masculine energies within the hearts of all men and women. May we have the willingness and determination to make the journey from our heads back to our hearts. May we learn to father and mother ourselves and take care of our inner child. And may we remember what it is to love ourselves, each other, all sentient beings, and this sacred earth, for ourselves, our children, and the generations to come. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Miguel Dean, catalyzing the twin flame union of divine masculine and feminine energies within the hearts of men and women. I'm the author of my new book, Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story, published by Sacred Stories, and available online through booksellers worldwide, or receive a personalised and signed copy from my website if you like, which is migueldean.net. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast and to join me next time, where we will explore the first principles of sacred masculinity. No, we won't. We will explore the second principle of sacred masculinity. Until we meet again, be well. Aho.